talk about American politics over the next 25 years. Because we have an election coming up, and we can guess it's close, it's getting closer. There's every reason to think McCain can win this, but he can still lose it also. But win, lose, or draw in November, the questions before the people of the 50 states are going to remain the same. And there are two coalitions in American politics. If you go back 100 years, even 50 years, and tell somebody you're a Republican, all you know about the person was that they were born north of the Mason-Dixon line. We had regional parties, and it didn't tell you anything about where they stood on taxes or spending or foreign policy or regulations or any number of issues. And then we had various immigrants groups that would come over, and depending on who was mean to you when you showed up at the port, you joined the other party's team. This was not really a very rational way to pick up teams in trying to decide how to govern what was becoming the most important, powerful, rich nation in the world. It was during the lifetime of Ronald Reagan, the political lifetime of Ronald Reagan, that the two coalitions did sort them out in rational ways. Our coalition, the center-right coalition, the Reagan Republican Conservative coalition. If you wonder, why are guys on our team? What makes them stay? What makes them vote? Think of who sits around the table. Everybody's there because on the issue that moves their vote, the issue that's closest to their heart, the issue that matters to them when they walk in and think about voting or volunteering or getting active in politics, on that issue they want one thing from the government, and that's to be left alone. So if you think about who's around the table, taxpayers, they don't want other people's taxes raised. They just want their taxes reduced. Property owners, they don't want the guy's property that's next to theirs. They want their property left alone. The Second Amendment vote, the 4 million members of the NRA, the maybe 5 million guys with concealed carry permits in the country, not in Hawaii, that are an increasingly growing part of the Second Amendment. Again, they just want to be left alone. They don't go knocking on your door and telling you to be a hunter. They don't ask for gun stamps for all hunters. They don't even insist that every 4th grade child in America's public schools receive a book entitled Heather Has 2 Hunters. They just leave us alone. The homeschooling movement, illegal in every state 20, 30 years ago. Now, 2 million Americans take the time and effort, 2 million adults take the time and effort to educate their kids at home. They pass on the government's kind offer to babysit their kids for 12 years for free. Right? And say, we'll handle this ourselves at tremendous sacrifice. And again, all they ask is to be left alone to do that. They don't go knock on your door and tell you to homeschool. They just want to be left alone to raise their own kids and educate their own children. All the various communities, if we do our job properly, however, if we put our foot on the air hose, if we say no new taxes and mean it, and stop the flow of cash into the center of Hillary's table, recently stolen by a guy named Obama, but the same guys around the table, just new ownership. If we stop allowing taxes to increase, putting more money there, and the cash starts to dwindle, then everybody who sits around the table begins to look at each other a little bit more like the second to the last scene, those lifeboat movies. And you begin to wonder who you're going to eat or who you're going to throw overboard, because all of the guys around the table are competitors. The left is made up of competing parasites. They're not friends, they're not allies, they're competing parasites. And if we don't let them chew on taxpayers, they will go after the guy and start gnawing on the guy next to him. Our job is to stop sending them cash, make them gnaw on the next guy for 2 years, so that when we meet them at the next election, there are fewer of them and they're shorter. So, those are the two coalitions. And the reason I really enjoyed writing the book, Leave Us Alone, and there's copies of here that I'm cheerfully signed for people, is that it's going to be true next year. I I've had friends who write books that, you know, last 3 weeks until something changes. But the nature of the two coalitions isn't going anywhere. And there isn't, we can't go somewhere other than be the Leave Us Alone coalition. And they're not willing to go anywhere other than being the Takings coalition. Now, if we do our job properly and shrink the size of government, there are fewer of them and more of us all the time. And there are a number of trends that we can help push forward. The number of people who care about the Second Amendment. The move recently by the National, over the last 10 years, by the National Rifle Association to focus on getting concealed carry. We now have about 40 states that shall issue concealed carry permits. You're 21 years old, you haven't been in prison recently, and you're not crazy, and you're a good person, you can use a gun to give you a permit. They shall give you the permit. I'm originally from Massachusetts. Well, when I was young, my parents emigrated to America, but before that, we lived in Massachusetts. And they have may issue. So if the cops like you, they may issue your gun, which is Massachusetts. Nobody gets one unless you're related to the mayor of Cambridge or Boston. But in the suburbs and the rural areas, everybody who wants one gets one. So they've disarmed the cities and armed the suburbs. I'm not sure they've thought this through. Some sort of long transparency, however, is at first glance an honest government issue. Ralph Nader joined me in sending a letter to every governor in the country three times now, saying, please take a look at this, think about this, love to talk to you about it. The Democrat governor of Washington State with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate passed the legislation written by their right-wing state think tank on transparency because it's just good government. I mean, Ralph Nader thinks that if you understood how wisely the government was spending your money, you'd send them more. I am willing to run that risk. That's not how I think people will react, but if it does, then we're in trouble. And what happens here is that it's a good government issue. Left and right people that want clean, honest government before it. The press loves it. This is the lazy person wins Pulitzer Prize legislation. They go on, they click a few things, they get a couple of numbers, they make 2 phone calls the next day, and they've got an article every day for the rest of their lives looking at state spending. If the legislature doesn't want to do it, the governor can do it by executive order. If the governor doesn't want to do it, the legislature can pass it and force it on him. If it's in Massachusetts, in Michigan, the Democrat governor doesn't want to do it, the Republican Secretary of State did it for the Secretary of State's office. The Republican Attorney General who wants to run against the Secretary of State for the Republican nomination to run for governor did it in the Attorney General's office. In the great state of Kentucky, the Democratic governor won't do it, so the Republican who's going to run against him did it in his department. So anybody can get up and can do this in their own department, their own division, their own congressional, state legislative office, and you therefore can't stop it. You can't bottle up in committee. The press likes it, so you can't make it go away the way you can some other questions. It's got left and right supporters, so you can't say, oh, there's a dirty trick by them. You know, so you don't pay no attention. That's them misbehaving again. So the other factor is that it's not just happening at the state level. This is beginning to move to the local level. Watch in January, Texas is going to pass a law to require every subdivision of the state, every county, every city, every town, every school district to be completely transparent. Florida is likely to pass the same law also next year. Without waiting for that, Collin County in county just next to Dallas just went transparent themselves. What's the matter with the rest of you guys? Cincinnati's county, Hamilton County in Ohio went transparent. Hey, we're not a corrupt county. What about the rest of you guys?
Thank you for coming all the way here.